Hello, Global Theater. My name is Gerry Fialka. Today's March 14, 2026. Want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. Also want to thank the Electric Lodge in Venice, California for introducing me to today's guest, Kent Jacobs. Where are you calling from, Kent?
Yes, I'm also in Venice. I'm here in Venice Beach. I just moved down the block on Electric Avenue.
How cool is that? First question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
Wow, we're diving right in. Best thing, I mean, I'm an artist, so I definitely believe in like the arts and community. So I would say connecting with others and celebrating in the joys of our creation, whether that's through the creation of food or music or art. I feel like those are the kind of the best moments of humanity.
Really cool. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
Ooh, could you give me some examples?
Well, however you receive information. I mean, I can give you a million examples. I mean, a lot of people say, a lot of
Maybe like
people
an
say,
airdrop, like mail delivery.
well,
I
that's
don't
what
know.
talk about being creative rather than me give you examples and suggestions. Airdropping as an answer I never get. So yeah,
Yeah. Receiving information. I feel like it depends on the context of the information too, right? Like if it's something serious that takes time to digest, sometimes it's nice as like in a written form, whether that's an email or handwritten letter. But otherwise, I think just even face-to-face conversations, I think are the most immediate, valuable way to connect and receive that information.
yeah, that's called direct experience. That's the answer I get the most. I mean,
Mhm.
saying written, printed word. Were you a reader growing up?
No, that was actually my weak spot was reading and writing. I had to go to a lot of like extracurricular classes and private lessons to become a stronger, uh, yeah, English reader and
But
writer.
you can read notes on scores.
Moderately well. Yeah, I'm less adept at sight reading, but I've gotten better through music directing and leading bands because of
Right.
just the necessity of plunking out notes for people.
Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Oh, I think to better ourselves and to grow our species. I feel like the kind of hunter gatherer mentality is millennial old of millennia old of surviving, right?
Does this need or want to collect information? Is it more innate or more invented?
Oh, I feel like wait to need or want is what you said.
Yeah, the need or want to collect information is
Information.
is that more innate or more invented in humans?
That's a good question. I imagine innate because I feel like collecting information about yeah even like cave drawings or fire. I feel like again that's got to be an old way of just being human.
Do thoughts create emotions?
Oh, I think emotions can come from a thought derivative of, but I don't know if the necessarily starts it off.
Right. Fill in the blank, Kent. I don't know what I think until
I don't know what I think until I ooh. I like that. That's my response too. Is more thought. I don't think until I think.
yeah.
Because
No, that
I
was
feel like
good.
a lot of people might just start speaking, and I find myself in that pattern sometimes too, where I'll speak to let the thought come out, so it doesn't just get bottled up in there.
Yeah, no, I like first thought, best thought is like, I don't know what I think until I ooh. That was a
Exactly.
good
It's
answer.
musical. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And can humans think without language?
I imagine so.
Yeah.
I imagine so. Because it's a feeling. I remember growing up. There were my earliest dreams were like fractals, and those were just feeling and sensation, and they were scary and sometimes beautiful, and they were wordless. So I imagine that has a connection to our thoughts and being and not needing language for that.
Chomsky says language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. Ken, what do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
I use a different form of language, right? If we're trying to communicate through English, I'm a definitely a grounded physical theater, body language type of communicator,
Yeah.
and rely on that frequently. Honestly, I prefer that, and that's I think why I was drawn to like the Blue Man Group growing up, and music, because it was speechless, vocalless, and could yeah, rely on communicating in a way that felt innate to me.
Yeah, we're going to get into music in a while, but a few more of these more philosophical. Your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
I feel like on a global scale, we're probably more feeling beings. I think at the essence, growing up as babies too, or we don't know how to necessarily process our thoughts, and we're just kind of feeling out the world. And I think underneath it all, we're still feeling out the world and can trust our instincts when things don't feel right or feel amazing.
Yeah, it's funny because Bridget Bardot says, when I make love, I don't think. And it's like, good luck. How do you turn your brain off? Or like people who meditate say, now think about not thinking. And there's a bumper sticker on a car in my street says, don't believe everything you think. And I'm like, well, you could say, don't believe everything you feel.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a meditative practice, right? Is just to let that kind of process through, and not hold on to or latch onto it too strongly. Just know that it's coming and going.
Yeah. These are two from Alan Turing in the 50s. One is thinking a function of the soul.
Say that one more time. Thinking is the function of
Is
the soul.
is thinking a
Is
function of the soul?
I haven't really thought much about if the soul is connected uh, with our brain in that way. Do you have a belief of how the soul operates in relation to our
Um,
mind?
well, a lot of people answer it that way. It depends on what you mean by a soul. And then they go, I don't know what a soul is. And they go, yeah, it depends on what you mean by thinking. Lily Tomlin says, reality is just a collective hunch. Most of words we use, we have a collective hunch at what they kind of mean. So soul is a little tougher because, soul music or soul is this spirit inside you. So, I mean, logically, I guess you would think that thinking is a function of the mind more than the soul, but I don't have any answers to any of these questions. I have hunches, and then
Hmm.
having done this for 40 years, I get so many different answers. That's why I do it, so I can widen my thought patterns, But
Beautiful.
I don't know. I mean, it's just what I'm asking for is your hunch or your guess on the ones. And you have to feel comfortable in saying, I don't know, or you don't have to, but I encourage you to re- be able to say, I don't know, or I can't answer that. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, in other words. And then I'm for tangents, anecdotes, and stories because literally you don't have to answer the question. You can just talk. It's just prompts. So the second
That's why
Turing,
I'm curious to throw it back your way of what because that was one I
yeah,
don't know. And
this,
it makes me think about you're talking about language being having multifaceted definitions too. I find myself at work or in relationships finding that a word or uh, some level of communication is misinterpreted, and I'm like, oh yeah, we can see it from that angle, and then see if we can find common ground, because I think that's ultimately the goal, is like to find some mutual understanding.
it is. We have the ability to clear up. Hey, I don't know what you mean by that. I mean, I do it 5, 10 times a word. I says, could you give me another word for that word? The guy
Hmm.
said, he on one of my questions yesterday said hubris. And I goes, could you give me another word for that? I just wanted him to suss it out. I could look it up in the dictionary or thesaurus, but I like when people try to find a common ground like you're talking. So the second
Hmm.
Turing question is, can machines think?
Well, there's that conversation now about AI and if that's really thinking or not. I would argue that it's not, and it's just a conglomeration of others' thoughts kind of
Yeah.
compiled together, and they're I'm finding some solitude in that there's almost a plateau of AI in recent time where people are seeing that it's just becoming slop and regurgitation. So I like to think that there is not a sense of thinking with machines, and that hopefully it never comes to that, so we don't get overruled by them.
Yeah. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Oh, I think ultimately, deep down, I prefer meaning, and there is solitude and gratitude and satisfaction that comes from the meaning direction. But I think in fleeting moments, the happiness is like, oh, I want that scoop of ice cream from Salt and Straw. Like I'll go for the quick bites of happiness, or having a beautiful conversation with a friend and cherishing that, which I think ultimately leads to meaning. So I would still veer towards meaning being the priority.
Yeah, I got the question from Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. He says, sort of exactly what you said. He says, happiness doesn't, meaning, happiness doesn't tend to last, meaning tends to last.
Hmm. And it's kind of a cycle. It feels like a laundry machine where like the
Yeah,
one feeds the other and then vice
yeah.
versa.
It's like also a cone that's spinning around, and then it spins up sometimes and it
Mm.
spins down. Yeah.
Yeah, see, and we're talking about this, the body language of it, where I maybe don't have the right words, but then I could visualize it and describe it in a
Yeah.
metaphorical way that makes sense to find that
Yeah.
understanding.
That's why we're on television, telephone. That's
It makes a
that's it.
difference.
It is television, telephone. So, does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
I haven't thought about consciousness too much. Um, I feel like we're not creating. We said the two options: creating it or what?
Detecting.
Detecting it. I feel like we're mostly detecting it. Oh, but good point though, because then that's us creating it. Because if it doesn't exist, or if it does exist, then we're still kind of creating it in our own minds by identifying it. So
Yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah, I haven't thought about that before.
What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
I think I have pretty slow thoughts. I'd say the speed of light.
Audre Lorde, the poet, said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Her colleague Yvonne Rainer says, oh, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest? And it doesn't have to be tangible.
Oh, uh, tools in life. I I find myself overly communicating lately to my own demise in some cases. So I think that tool of communicating is valuable in most cases, but you also have to learn when to like shut your trap and know it's too much.
That's really good. And so I asked people the tool question, and one person said, well, what about a toy? So what's a toy you gravitate towards?
I use the crutch of my iPhone, and I like playing games on there, or checking in on friends on Instagram. Uh, but I think toy wise, I've been enjoying. There's a video game on Steam on my laptop, and I don't typically play games on my laptop, but I've enjoyed playing Blueprints, and it's like you're a character that runs through the world and opens new rooms that unlocks a mystery in this giant mansion that you inherit. So I think in terms of actual practical toys, I've been enjoying playing that with my girlfriend.
Cool. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
I generally try to get through my worries through the day so that I am not fretting, or if I have to process something, I'll get up and physically go move my body, or write something down, so that it's not lingering. I think it's always evolving, and I could look at my journal. I've got a digital journal on my phone app, and I'll be fretting about something in 2015 that's like completely irrelevant to my life now, and then now I'm like focused on things at my theater, and like those are things I hadn't even comprehended as a possibility 2 years ago. So I think, our mind always is generating worries or anxieties, little things, and how you hold on to them. I find that journaling them down is a good way to get rid of them. And therefore, if I am worried about something as I'm going to sleep, I usually try to journal, get rid of it, and then my mind is free to like settle down and properly sleep.
Really good. McLuhan learned from a poet that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So I ask you, Kent, the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Hmm. I would even say that in some cases, my antenna is in a different direction than some others. I feel like artists
Yeah.
have a different broadcast to different channels. If
Yeah.
we were to use that analogy, and I tend to do kind of bright, uplifting type of music making and art, and there's others that can really dive deeply into like political world or deeper emotional sectors of anger, sadness, fear, etc. And I I like exploring those worlds, but I think my gift is more of the uplifting, the bright energy, and that's where I would say the channel of that thing is maybe different than just like tapping into that psyche, because I think it's varied for other people.
But you curate these theater events at Electric Lodge, and you can see an audience consuming them, whether they're yours or somebody you book there. And
Yes,
sometimes audiences, and I'm not saying it's bad or they're lacking. Sometimes audiences don't get the deeper meaning of the artist. So
for
even though
sure.
you might come across bright, someone might interpret you differently. So
Mhm.
these sort of hidden psychic effects of our inventions are being broadcast by the artist, but sometimes the audience doesn't get the deeper meaning. Why do you think sometimes the audience does not get at the deeper meaning?
I think it's the how it's communicated, or where they're coming from the day too. If
Yeah,
if somebody is not receptive of a certain part of it, or they literally checked their phone for a brief second and missed a visual thing that happened on stage, I think we're always constantly tuning out, turning in, and uh, it's unfortunate if a deeper meaning's missed. And I think if anything, that's guiding the purpose of the artist to make sure they feel like they did their job right, and not necessarily uh, it's not necessarily bad. I wouldn't put a binary good
right.
or bad on receiving a deeper meaning or not. It's like, did you have a good experience, or not even did you have an experience, and what did you take away? And
Experience.
I think that's the beauty of art too, is anyone can walk away. And I think of I don't perform in plays or musicals as often, but I can think of shows where I had a really terrible show for whatever reason, like my you know I stepped on a piece of glass before the show and I was bleeding, and like I'm just hyper fixated and I'm just trying to get through this like physical theater show, and I come out of it like, man, I don't think I was at my best. I'm just proud I got through it, and there's an audience member weeping or having a
Right.
profound experience that maybe interpreted a deeper meaning that wasn't necessarily on the forefront of my brain either, or vice versa, where I'm proud of an experience of performing or sharing my piece of art, and uh, no one gives a rat's ass about it.
Yeah. Do artists have moral obligation?
Some do. I'd say some artists don't care, and they'll do whatever they want, and that's their own choice. And
Yeah.
I think it's responsible. It's kind of the thing of the meaning versus chasing happiness versus chasing clout or chasing uh, numbers in some other way. It comes down to what a person artist's priority is, and I don't think it necessarily means they're not an artist. It just means their priorities aren't in a certain direction.
Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
I tend to find myself afraid. I'm always afraid in a good way of new ideas, like the trepidation of like, oh, what is this? But then ultimately, it's exciting, it's rewarding. But I think for the longest time, I found excitement in doing like the Blue Man Group show and being a performer and just doing that same show for decades. because I could sink my teeth in deeper and find more meaning and more excitement out of doing the same thing as like any other kind of circus or variety performer. And the idea of having to constantly generate new, especially in my world of like TikTok, YouTube, of like generating new content is feels daunting, because then it's like, why can't I just relish in making the same music that I love, or playing and like getting in deeper into it? So for me, I would say I actually tend toward fearing the new, but ultimately it's rewarding, and I'm grateful to have like committed to it and learning more about myself in the process.
Beautiful. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, or one of them?
Yeah, it's one of the twofold. It's one is those early dreams. They were just like fractals. Like imagine like a yellow span of a thing with like black windmills rolling around, or this like red dot that would expand and shrink from side to side. Like those are my earliest dreams, and therefore some of my earliest memories. And then my sister had open heart surgery when she was 5 and I was 3, and I remember being at my preschool, like staying overnight over there, and then going to visit her in the hospital. And I think because that was such a big important milestone in her life, and therefore my early development too, that's kind of one of my earlier memories of being. Do you remember yours? How I mean, I can
Oh
only imagine.
no, I'm not good at that one, but oh boy, it's amazing the answers I get over 40 years, because they're usually visual or auditory, but it is sometimes something to do with the family, uh, some sort of thing that happened in the family. But I wanted to ask you this question that just came up. New Yorker magazine had an article posing the questions: do babies dream inside the womb, or do you need to be outside the womb and have experience in the world to be able to dream? Just your hunch, either way. Do you think that babies are dreaming inside the womb, or they need to have experience outside?
I'm not sure when the brain is developed enough for that, and I imagine my assumption is it's not in the womb, but
You
that'd be
have to
pretty
be out.
wild.
Yeah,
I
you
feel
have
like
to be
the
outside.
dreams, yeah, the fact that like I don't remember my dreams before being like 3 years old. I don't know if that's like
Yeah.
as the memory of it, but that's a good point though. Like the memory of the dream versus the dream actually occurring. Did they mention any study of knowing one way
I
or the
read it
other?
so long ago. It's just interesting how people tend to feel about that. It works both
Interesting.
ways. But do you think memory is more a curse or more a blessing?
I think it's ultimately a blessing because it's guiding your experience, and uh, I think whether it's good or bad, it can help dictate the choices you make and hopefully inform some better decisions. So, uh, and I think there are ways to accept a memory and let it go, and I think that's ultimately, um, I think, a blessing.
Yeah.
That's part of life.
Tell me someone within your immediate family who had an impact on you, and what was that impact?
Oh, certainly. I would give a shout out to my sister. The fact that she's been a guiding light for me my whole life, and even in the pandemic when I felt lost and not sure what to do with my career, let alone my life, like I moved back home with my family. She was like, "Why not try doing TikTok and making some fun videos and just keeping it fun?" And I'm
Yeah.
really grateful because that kind of resurged. I've been making content for like 10 years at that point, and that resurged a new chapter and excitement for me to make video content and be sharing my work in the world.
That's fun, man. That word fun is the key. So
Hmm.
same question, Ken. Outside your immediate family, someone who had an impact, and what was the impact?
Hmm. Uh, I would reflect on one of my heroes was the co-founder of Blue Man Group named Chris Wink, and specifically him because he had the visions of this like Blue Man character, and I think is kind of led the charge with his collaborators to develop the inspiration that really kicked off my artistic journey with a purpose. It's funny. I'm not as like driven to become a blue man anymore. I've kind of let that chapter close. But for the longest time, that was kind of my dream career, and I test the fascination of playing pipe marimbas to their development and their creative experience. So I'd say Chris Wink.
Beautiful. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
I grew up Unitarian. My dad was super religious. We literally have there's sisters of his that are sisters. They're nuns back in Philadelphia. So that was something that was important to him. And we went to church, this Unitarian church in Portland, up until I was like 12. And then after that, we were just busy with our own extracurricular experiences. Like my sister and I grew up dancing, taking piano. There was just enough other things in our lives that took over that we stopped going. But I think I still value just the characteristics of being a good human. And when I went to Loyola Marymount University too, there's certainly kind of the religious factor of that, and had to take some religious studies there. But I don't necessarily subscribe to any religion at the moment, and having been exposed to Buddhism, I think I'm more agnostic, if anything, of just being open and receptive of anything rather than letting that childhood dictate where I am now.
Do you pray?
Occasionally, yeah. When I'm in a dark place, I'll tap into that. It's kind of like it's few and far between, I would say.
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Oh, I think I would take comfort in knowing that I did a good job. Like just one of those kind of like pat on the back, like, you know, I see that you tried. And I think that's ultimately my goal in life, is trying to better other people's lives as well and leave an impact that's positive.
Beautiful. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Ooh, I never considered evil as its own entity in that way, like a devil character. But I would say it's hard because I even was talking to a friend on Monday that was in a kind of a therapy kind of group collective where they examined evil behaviors and how that could be looked at with a new lens, right? So they went into some like deep like dark topics like rape, let's say, and how that's terrible, and we all agree like that's not good, not a good thing. And so that's inherently, I think, societally an evil action. And they were challenging them to say, how could you reframe that to be in a positive light? And my initial reaction was like, absolutely not. Like there's nothing good that can come from that. But then you could say, oh, there's laws that came into place that would help counter that and help prevent that from happening again, or the conversations that come out of it, or et cetera. And we didn't get farther than that, so I don't even have the depth to even speak further on that. And it's still uncomfortable with even the concept of trying to even reframe that as a good thing. So I would ultimately say evil. It's a good point. It could be the vehicle for people, but I haven't thought about how if evil is inherently in people, or I feel like it's kind of yin and yang, where we all kind of have a balance of all of that, and it's our choice to whether we act on it or not.
Yeah. Well, really, the hidden question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mom and the samurai. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I feel like with enemies in my past is that thought of like, hold your friends close but your enemies closer. Of it's kind of that level of that communication that we're talking about from earlier too. If I can practice that over communication, just make sure we're on the same page as much as we can to help squell because ultimately I feel like an enemy is there's a misunderstanding, there's a miscommunication, we're not finding that common ground. So I ultimately think that to get around that would be to hold your enemies close.
Yeah, that's amazing. Really good. Nassim Taleb said games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. Gregory Bateson says, hey, if the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff? Or does he go, I did something morally and socially wrong? So again, it's a lot of prompts. The basic question is, does punishment work?
I think it allows space for reflection. I think if most people might be pursuing a like again the immediate happiness versus the long form meaning. Imagine some folks don't realize in the moment that their actions are maybe a danger to others or hurting others in a way that they anticipated, or they've kind of, they're maybe mentally unwell to like block that off altogether, in which case the punishment, even just like having that space or time to process that, whether that's organized punishment from a bigger scale, or it's just them being left with the thought for years to come. I think
Yeah,
that does help. That reflection is a part of it all.
I like that. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
I think it allows for bigger, deeper experiences that you wouldn't necessarily experience in a day-to-day life. Certainly,
Yeah.
I would hope people live out their lives, and then those experiences would be more meaningful for them, because I feel like
Yeah.
you see yourself and you see your experiences on the stage, like we were speaking about earlier. So I think there's also the thrill seeking, right? That's why people go take a roller coaster, is they want that thrill of the emotional ride. And I remember studies of like, heart monitors on audience members, and they could watch how the uh, what is the blood
Pulse.
your pulse
Pulse. Yeah.
adjusting with the course of the show. Like everyone kind of, their beats per minute rose and then fell at different parts altogether. And I think that's the collective experience, and the thrill of that experience is maybe why people seek it out.
Yeah. So walk us through, Glenn, your tipping points. Where did you go? I want to pursue piano and music. Where did you go? I want to be a theater artist. What'd you study in high school and college? And where's that tipping point? That's my calling.
Funny enough, there was a in between. It was film, and what it was I grew up as a baby. I was fascinated with the sound and the the celebration of piano making, and
Yeah.
so I started with just banging around, and then had some formal lessons. My uncle, I remember stumbling across his old like family videos, and he did these stop motion videos where he would say, "Hey," to my mom, like, "Hey, go sit in the grass. Let me get a single frame, and then you scooch forward and scoot," and then it ultimately made it look the magic of her sliding around the grass like she was driving a car or something. And I thought that was the coolest thing. And that was a very impressionable age, like 12, 13. So I started doing some of those myself. And around that same time, I was exposed to Blue Man Group, was curious about kind of physical theater and nonverbal storytelling, kind of connected with, growing up dancing as well, which did tap, ballet, jazz. So I was kind of pursuing all these different things. And in high school, I was kind of starting to bring it all together and putting out YouTube videos and making fun projects at school, that I ultimately was pursuing film. And I was trying to do that as my career, because I was like, oh, this seems like the trajectory. And I remember going to visit LMU, meeting with their chair of the film department. I was like, oh yeah, I think it'd be so fun to make like Lego stop motions. And he's like, well, you got to learn how to draw and you got to do storyboarding. I was like, that doesn't sound fun. And then I remember doing a senior year for an assembly. I made a video, home video for the whole school to see, and it was green screen videos of my, our assembly directors in Disney animated films. So the whole point was to help promote our upcoming, they called it MORP, but like Sadie Hawkins dance. And we shot them basically entering the world of these Disney movies, Snow White, Little Mermaid, Lion King, and Aladdin. And they were going to find some object in there. And I remember being devastated because we were trying to shoot all this really complicated tech stuff with less than 48 hours. And so the night before, I was still like up late editing, and I had an old computer, like couldn't really do much with it. The green screen looked really fragmented and weird. And I fell asleep, and I woke up and it was like showtime, assembly time. And I had one of 4 videos done, and I was freaking out. I had this basically like a traumatic moment of like running into the school, trying to bring my computer and things I had and try to salvage even a sense of an experience for the 1,000+ kids and the teachers. And I felt like I failed in that moment because I didn't have enough time to get it all done and succeed. And so in that moment too, I was reflecting, as like, why can't we just do this live? Like, we've got the same actors, we still have all the same costumes and props. Why couldn't we just like get on a microphone and do it? And that is where it switched for me of, oh, with theater, the show must go on. There is an opportunity, even with like, I've done shows where like there's, rainstorm, we're outside, you find a way, like the human spirit prevails, that even in the default of technology not supporting us, you can find a way to make the experience, transfer to the audience. And so literally it was that same week, I was like, January of 2010, where I was like, well, or 2010, where I was like, nope, I'm switching my major. I don't want to focus on film. I want to focus on theater. And that was the switch for me to then, pursue the live performing arts rather than just the digital realm. Even though I still keep your enemies close, I still utilize it. I still integrate with it. Like I've got 3 million followers across all my platforms, and yet I prefer the live intimate experience probably because of that experience.
Boy, that was well described. Hold on one second. I have to check something.
Of course.
Yeah.
Love your background. You got so many fun things. Keys and things.
So that was really well put. You described it in such a way I could really visualize it. And you did what McLuhan learned from James Joyce the most, is how do you turn a breakdown into a breakthrough? How do you turn a rejection into a redirection, or a weakness into a strength? So that was really well done. Now, a screenwriting teacher, Kent, a screenwriting teacher told me great film or great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Stanley Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process when you're creating something that's just original, Ken? It's not an assignment. It's not a commission. It's just you. What role does intention play?
I would even say it takes a backseat in original development, right? I think in the ultimate sharing of it, there's some intention, whether it's like, oh, I'm making this for my mom, or I'm making this for a big audience. I think ultimately all art, you can find a reason why it's intended, but I find joy in when I'm just making like a piano song, like I'm just sitting down at the piano, just letting myself relax and find out what comes naturally from just sitting with it. And I wouldn't say there's necessarily intention besides openness to play.
Yeah, really good. Openness to play. I love those words. Now, Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your potential audience when you're making your art?
Again, it varies. Again, there's I remember, especially specifically with like the YouTube, Instagram, all that, I think about the form, right? If I'm making a vertical video, I found such joy in the TikTok era because it felt like it harkened back to the vaudeville days where there's a proscenium and you're trying to fit everything into this small, specific sized box. And I think in that regard, I was, I'm intentional with making things in the form, and then with how it's, directed or who it's for. I think there's always a choice, and it's whether it's, yeah, the intimacy of like, this is for my friend, I'm sharing it with the world anyways, no intention of it doing, like millions of views or whatever, versus, yeah, this is for a corporate gig in an event, and it's got to hit 10-minute mark, and I have to execute these certain talking points and put on a good show. Like,
Yeah.
I like the variety too, and I think that's what makes it kind of fun. And I take solace that it doesn't have to be everything. It can be simple and just focus on one person even.
Yeah, McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness or human sensorium, a human sense. Knife and fork extends our teeth. Shutter and a camera extends our eyelid. And maybe non-tangible, say religion and philosophy, extends consciousness. What humanness does the rimba tubes extend? It's sort of like your form of a marimba or a vibes, that
Mm-hmm.
percussive instrument that you invented. What does it extend? What humanness? What human sensorium?
I think there's a primal urge for people to just bang on stuff. The
Yeah.
drumming, drum circles, and just hanging around at a campfire. I think for me too, there's a joy in finding the nostalgia of recognizable music, and it's kind of us taking a back step to say like, oh yeah, I remember that old TV show or this fun old tune, and finding joy in that. And I think for me, that's what inspired me from seeing the Blue Man Group play the pipes and play recognizable music on the pipes to say, oh, I want to hear more of that. And so for me, it's a kind of an extension of the joy I experienced with experiencing Blue Man Group, as well as wanting to, yeah, share other kind of nostalgia and celebrate music for other people.
Copeland says the four elements or ingredients of music are melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color. How do you incorporate those four? How do you navigate them? Do you have a favorite? Any ritual to composing a Kent piece in how you employ those four elements?
Mm-hmm. I find it helpful to focus on simplifying it. So in my case, the joy with the Rimba tubes is there is not much variety in the tone quality. There's a little bit you can achieve, but mostly you just hit a note and it's a staccato, short, plosive air sound. And then the variety of pitches and then the layers of those. I've certainly embellished upon that, adding accordion or drums or fun other ukulele instruments in that regard. And I often think of because I'm so hyper fixated on that sound for the vast majority of my music creating commercial career, I do enjoy sitting back down at the piano, having 10 fingers instead of just two paddles, or listening to more abstract music that, maybe is two tones that then kind of gently slide to different pitches, because that pitch bend is something I can't experience with even mallet percussion and piano percussion in that regard. It's always just one clean tone that I create. So I find in different circumstances it's enjoyable to explore those different facets of the four that you described, but I like kind of simplifying it down and saying, okay, what is the most I can create with this minimalistic one tone and sound, and letting that be celebrated.
My friend says the three T's of music are technique, theory, and taste. Technique, you learned how to play. Theory, you know the structure. How does one acquire taste?
I think everyone has their own taste, and I think some people can be more critical of others if they don't feel aligned with their taste. But I think everyone's just doing what they love, and I think that's worth celebrating.
McLuhan says song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference. Any thoughts on that?
Say that one more time.
The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language differences.
Yeah, I've always been curious how the history of like Indian music has more tones in a scale, right? It's not just limited to that 12 tone chromatic scale that we're familiar with in Western music culture, and I'm always amazed by the intricacies of like tablas, like Indian music that can get really intricate and intertwined in that way. So I imagine there's also a little bit more musicality in their language as well. And I think I remember hearing like a decade ago about there was a study of like a of Chinese speaking mothers speaking like kind of calling for their baby. I'm misremembering this, so I apologize. It's not quite a clear quote, but it was something about they had them record like, you know, uh, Lisa, like they would just sing the daughter's name, and then 5 years later, 10 years later, they recorded that again, and they would get Lisa, and they get the same exact pitch and melody from that call, and that they somehow with their language they could like hit that same like replicate it perfectly again, even though it was like many years, decades later.
Wow.
So I think there is something to say about different cultures and their language and having an impact on music making. I would be curious to explore that more, and admittedly, I'm just a fan of it to not to say at the very least.
What's more fundamental, music or language?
Ooh, I think there's a musicality to language, so possibly music. And I feel
Yeah.
like that'd be the artistic way to say music. Because even babbling as a baby, I feel like there's it's more music and trying to recreate the tones and sounds that you're receiving than necessarily the words of it. If anything, music is an attempt at communicating too.
Yeah, really good. Tell me an instrumental that makes you laugh, a song title that has no words that makes you laugh.
What's John Cage's? Is it the was it
432.
433?
Yeah.
433. Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember the first time I got to witness that. That was a joy to see them perform. It was just at college, and some friends did it. But yeah, I'd have to think on that if there's any other kind of more obscure instrumental songs that I think there's that make me laugh or just bring me joy.
Well, I sort of specifically asked for laugh, but yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, I think there's a little difference there because
that's
Gurji
true.
said laughter is the reconciliation of yes and no. But I love that you brought up Cage because he says silence is the sum of all the sounds of the environment. How do you know when not to play? How do you know when to incorporate silence?
It's funny. I peeked at your interview with Ellen Burr the other day because she's an artist that has come to the Electric Lodge, and I stumbled across that question. So I was like, "Ooh, am I going to get this question?" I feel like in especially in my work, like the instrument naturally will always be silent immediately afterwards. So if anything, I'm always trying to practice how to fill the sound more and
Yeah.
find joy in expanding upon that if I get to play with a second person or otherwise. But I think that's the art of being a human musician is feeling that in the moment, and whether you're being called upon. Like I used to street perform in Third Street Promenade in Santa Monica, and there's times where it's like, yeah, there's a huge like loud thing going by, and I'm like, okay, I should stop and like let this other thing that's taking more attention finish, and then I'll circle back and then fill the space with music otherwise. But I think it just comes down to awareness of whether you play or
Good
not play.
word, really good, Ken. Bob Dylan says experiences teach us that silence terrifies the most. Again, how
Mhm.
would you deal with that in regards to that word silence, you know?
Yeah, I think even putting aside music for a moment, I think that's the time where all those thoughts and memories that we were speaking about from prior can come or flooded back. Like the things that you've been ignoring or pushing aside for a while in the silence, that's where those can creep back. And I think that's where it can be fearful, but also I think powerful and beautiful to sit in that and experience it.
Yeah, working in a percussive instrument as you do and having the background in piano, you touched on this a second ago. Frank Zappa says it's unnatural to play in 4/4 time. You don't speak in 4/4 time. The question is, why is 4/4 time the most commonly used time signature in Western music?
Yeah, I think it's sad. It's become homogenized, hasn't it? I remember David Byrne having a really good chapter in his book, is it How Music Works?
It's like a
Yeah.
big, big thick book. And I remember loving chapter 1 about the evolution of music because of the space and context that it's performed in. Like a lot of the music, in a chamber ensemble was like quiet and intricate and dynamic because people were just sitting down in a small hall to listen to it with no distractions. But then look at the club music of, these loud thrashing, drummers and rock punk, because there's like a cavernous, basement in New York that they're playing the music in. And I think there's something, and then flash forward future, like music has now become kind of all mastered to be at a certain level, the compression and just being at this high end level so that it plays well on radio or on your earbuds as you're walking. I think sadly it's a time of speaks to the times of music becoming more mainstream and having to fit a certain pocket or form, whether it was like the vinyls and getting to that exact minute amount or radio time of like hitting a 3-minute slot. I think it's more it's commercialized. It's more of the capitalism of music that it became 4/4 became the standard. So I think it's very fun when we can expand beyond that and let the freedom of artistic expression break beyond those boundaries while still being performed in those contexts so that it can still be received or digested so that it can be enjoyed.
It's funny because people say besides being intuitive and easy, 4/4 might be because it's in sync with walking or marching or our heartbeat rhythm. Do you think our heartbeat is in a certain time signature? Or
I think it's jazz. I think it's very jazzy. I had a friend that has a heart murmur, and it's very much like so. I would say there's definitely natural rhythms in our nature, in our environment, and in our bodies, but everyone's is different, so it breaks beyond even that form.
Yeah. Ruth Draper says the key is to bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you. It is they who must give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power. Sounds good, but how do you do that?
Say that one more time. That was a lot for me to
how do you bring the audience up onto the stage with you? You're especially being more
inviting. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you get the audience there? I mean, you work in a venue where you see this all the time. Sometimes the performer is really engaging the audience and sometimes they're not. What's your trick or what's your philosophy on how to engage the audience?
I just had a beautiful flashback to Susie Williams performing with Michael Yost like a year ago. And I think that was maybe the night we met too. And I think the generosity of spirit and like sharing that out can also like be kind of a call to the audience. But I think then having a human quality to yourself to kind of let the guard down and invite the audience to do that as well. And I can think of so many artists that do that so effectively, but I think there is specifically with inviting physically another audience member or human being to join you on stage, there has to be that kind of like I see you and that trust and that like comfort of like I'll take care of you and make sure that this is done in a effective way, safe way. Especially more and more now. I think that's like kind of needed for somebody to feel comfortable to come up on stage. And also to as a performer too, I've busking. I remember people that are a little too much that would not be appropriate to actually bring up, and they're wildly gesturing like pick me, and you're like, no, I'm going to choose the quiet one that I'm making that direct eye contact with that feels like there's a complicity. So I think there's a variety of different ways to find somebody, especially physically to pull them up on stage, but I think that nature of calling it out and letting your guard down and having that human connection allows for those kind of experiences to arise naturally.
Yeah, it was great. You complimented Susie because one of her friends said once, Susie's like cuts her body open and hands you her heart.
It's such a garbless way too. It's just so generous and so beautiful and delightful.
Yeah. Leonard Cohen says the only way you can sell a concert is if you put yourself at risk. And if you don't do that, people know. What role does risk play in your creative process?
Ooh,
Yeah, I think making anything and putting it out there to the world is inherently risk taking, and I think a lot of people forget that. And I was even reflecting on, this is my first podcast in 2 years. I was like, oh, I don't know how do I need to get ready for this? Oh, is it like this? Felt like enough of a risk to like step into this, even though I think there is just naturally doing things more. The quantity of it makes it feel less risky. I think if we take a step back, we could always say, yeah, just showing up is inherently a risk, and
That's it
beautiful
right there.
mistake.
Because Viola Spolin, she sort of invented comedy improv, and check her
Oh,
out.
cool.
She's unbelievable. She in Chicago, she's a social worker. She's a social worker who developed role playing and basically spawned comedy improv. Groundlings
Wow.
and then Saturday Night Live. Here's her
Yeah.
line. If the audience cannot see your struggle to achieve something, they cannot root for you to achieve it. What role does struggle play in your creative process?
Yes, there's definitely an audience will prefer and buy behind. This is such a clown and comedy derivative technique, but they rather see the struggle, the process, than the results. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of folks are kind of result oriented, and I definitely was and still am at times. And you have to remember to kind of luxuriate in that awkward circle in the unknown. And it's hard because especially with clowning. I studied a year at Del Arte International School of Physical Theater up in Humboldt, and it was all about that. It was like kind of breaking down your own expectations and just being yourself on stage, specifically with clowning. And I think that requires humility and taking that risk, and knowing and trusting that, like, yeah, your failure is what the audience is there to relish in, because then they can see themselves in that and say, like, oh yeah, I get it. And that's, I think, where a lot of the humor can come out too.
You've touched on that twice, Ken, so I'm going to just jump to that question. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Absolutely. I think my success with especially my Ribitubes performance career is because I never became a blue man. I have tried so long, so hard. From the moment I first made my first PVC instrument and put out a video, everyone was like, oh, you should audition for Blue Man Group. This is in 2007, I think. And since then, almost 2 decades, there was that like journey of like, maybe I can be a blue man, maybe I can audition and become one of the troupe. And uh, out of the 5, 6 auditions I had over the years, I kept getting to that final callback, getting to go paint myself bald and blue, and being told no. And that was very hard, very devastating for me as a super fan of the show, and having that as like my trajectory for my career.
Yeah.
And that, I think, was a benefit to my own personal solo career, because then I could use that energy of like, I didn't make it, but like I still want to have that experience and be able to share that joy that I have of making this kind of weird music and performing in a fun, lightful way that I was seeking but couldn't achieve through being a part of the actual Blue Man Group. So ultimately, that's my kind of weakness to strength success story, because I would not be where I am today if I just joined the Blue Man Group. I would not have a bunch of followers that are even just lightly from the periphery. I've seen people like on Reddit say like, oh yeah, that guy, he auditioned and like never made it, but like good for him. Like it's cool to see him doing his videos still all these years later. So I'm grateful that it didn't work out, but for many years that was very hard for me to, like, a hard pill to swallow.
When you articulated that so well, Ken, did you learn that more from the way your parents raised you or on your own to process that 20 years of really trying and not getting it and flipping it into a benefit?
I think everyone in my life was always reflecting that back to me of like, you are enough, like you don't worry, like there was a failure or something, there would be that sort. But I'm more grateful that my family was just there supporting me all the way.
Yeah.
Like
not necessarily hand holding, but at least being a fallback like place to like get a hug or talk through a difficult thing, or literally, yeah, in the pandemic when everything else just like disappeared, was to be able to move back home and have that safety net with them. So I'm really grateful for my family in that regard of not necessarily teaching, because I think that lesson ultimately had to be discovered by myself, even though literally the entire world was telling me like, no, you're better than Blue Man Group, don't worry about it. Like, I think that required my own testing and self discovery to like really accept that and say, yep, this is the lesson. And uh, I'm just grateful for my family to support me along the way.
Really good. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
It's difficult. I think different circumstances require different ones. My instinct is compromise, but I can think of like directors in a play that have a strong conviction to say like, this is how I envision it. This is how I want it to be done. And everyone else is like, I don't get it. I don't want whatever. And then ultimately the final product is better than any of us could have expected because of their conviction. And at the same time, I think for us to get along better in the world, like we need compromise. And so that's, I think, where my instinct is to say, not necessarily the product might not be necessarily the best choice, but like just make sure that we can all get along and feel proud of the final product too. I think compromise is needed.
Beautiful. How do you rate these three elements in your accomplishments? Luck, skill, and ambition. What played the biggest role, second and third?
Ooh. They all, I would even say maybe equally, but let me think for a second. Ambition. And I feel like they come in a sequence, right? Like you kind of need the ambition to just like to build the skill and then have that luck to send you over the top. And maybe even luck to discover the skill, maybe the luck to have enough ambition in the day to go about achieving the thing. So I would say there's it's always evolving, and I don't think one is necessarily the other, but a recipe of a combination of all three are needed for the success, if we wanted to define it as that.
A poet said poetry's outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Probably like tone and rhythm. I wouldn't say it's necessarily like vocal music or anything, but that's kind of my inner life. Just like a little hum or just
Beautiful.
a vibe.
Two of my film heroes have this mantra, ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas says there's no self-expression. And Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making, music making more self-expression or more your vehicle for whatever technologies, cultures, and environments are dominant?
My mind went to, have you heard of the term duende?
No, how do you spell that?
Duende. And I might even Google it so I can give you the proper.
Okay,
yeah,
go ahead. What is
Spanish? It's a Spanish term referring to a mythical gnome-like goblin or spirit. And I think specifically with art, it represents a heightened state of emotion, expression, or authenticity. And so I feel like there's examples of it, of like a really young girl that does like flamenco dancing, and it's just like you just watch it and she's just like this fiery thing. You're like, wow, that age and that like expression is just so transcendent that's duende. And I feel like there are moments of duende and you can like open yourself to be a channel of that. But I feel like that is kind of the ultimate goal with art making, and it's rare when it happens. It's like, it's wonderful to cherish, but it's usually when you've like let go and opened yourself to being that vessel for that. So I think it can be an expression of yourself, but I think the highest form of it, of duende, is when you kind of relinquish the experience and just give it over to the art.
Dude, I needed that in my vocabulary. Thank you so much.
I'm glad I could offer something to you. You're throwing so much my way.
Can art making, music making be egoless?
I would say you kind of need your ego just to kind of get in, like, to do it. But there's so many art forms too, where like I think of those, so like also the Chinese dancers, they like kind of get in a whole line and then they have like their arms go like this, that. Like there's sometimes a sacrifice of giving over yourself to like the greater art that you're making. So I think it's different for everyone, and
Yeah.
I can definitely feel like at times my ego was, or my art was ego driven, with like, oh yeah, I just selfishly want to be a member of the Blue Man Group, which would have been my egoless state, funny enough. And so I think every to each their own, and I think there's a higher form again of being egoless, but that act of like showing up, you could argue, is a little bit ego driven, when even the pursuit of it is intended to be egoless.
Beautiful. It's really fun talking with you, Kent. I appreciate your time here. What do you think the motive of the cave artist was? Your guess or hunch?
Certainly to express or communicate something. Like, I feel like our actions are to ultimately relay some information, and I feel like that cave art is, the basis, like the baseline primitive form of trying to preserve some history, or uh, share something. So I would say that.
Yeah, one artist said, art is making your problems other people's problems. Any thoughts on that line?
I try not to make my problems other people's problems, but it's interesting that to say that that's in a artistic form. Yeah, especially if you're trying to communicate something that's heavier, or whatever. But I don't know if somebody would necessarily carry the same weight as you did, but who knows? Like maybe, your art can have that impact on somebody. It's interesting. I wouldn't necessarily have a opinion about it one way or the other.
Is perception reality?
Certainly our own reality.
Yeah. Tell me one major element of your artisticness, your Kentness, that's changed, and one major element that stayed the same in the years you've been doing this.
I definitely feel more grounded, and I, funny enough, could say even a decade ago I felt more grounded than when I started in any of my performance. But because there's in theater there's this concept of three circles, and it's kind of it's by, I think her name is Patsy Rodenberg. But the first circle is very inward. Second circle is the goal. It's kind of a general presence of kind of give and take. And then third circle is very outward, and you're just kind of pushing your energy out. And people can fluctuate. People have a tendency to be in one circle, and ultimately we want to be in the second circle, to be able to have conversation, receive, give, and be aware of our surroundings. So we're not, in third circle, we would be bumping into things and just being too big and outward with our energy. And that was a state that I was in, was like really wanting to show the world, like, here I am. And I learned like to soften that, and to be receptive, and to listen more, and to ground ourselves, to be able to have a better dialogue ultimately. And so I think that is something that I've bettered myself at. But at the same time, I'm also learning that, especially specifically in my art making, I like kind of providing light, providing brightness to others. And my name, Kent, my mom found a little like card on one of her, like you go into a gift shop somewhere in like a random town and you get like magnets or keychains. There was name cards, and my name, Kent, had the definition of bright or white. And I liked that kind of, even my name, there was kind of this essence of wanting to share light with the world. And I feel like that's something that's carried with me my whole life, just wanting to provide that for others. And I feel down on myself when I can't do that for others, and want to have more of a darker, quieter moment for myself. I think, and that's where I've learned to accept that, and that's a part of being a human, and like being a holistic person. So,
dude, you're a bright guy, man, and you emit light. That TED talk of yours, just like, you're just glowing. Yeah,
yeah. Thank you. That was a fun day. I woke up late. Classic. Like I woke up late. I was like, oh god, I gotta get there, and I'm really grateful that came together.
Utah Phillips says anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's entitled to make the rules?
Oh yeah, there is the conversation on definitely on a national level too of people, government making rules in a way that's not the way that we want. So um, I think the desire is for you to be able to make your own rules. I think when you're younger, you need to be told there are rules and to be able to have the opportunity to like choose your own rules that you want to follow in life. But I think it ultimately comes down to yourself, and society has rules as well that we should abide by, and hopefully we can all collectively agree. But I think ultimately you have to follow the rules yourself, and that's kind of self chosen.
It's funny because etymologically, the word freedom breaks down to exactly what Utah Phillips said, making one's own rules for one's own self. What does freedom mean to you now?
I prefer freedom when it's and specifically with art making, to be able to like have that freedom of not necessarily having to prescribe to like I have to do this thing or need to do thing a certain way, but to have self-expression in the act of doing it. And I feel like that is the freedom, is how you express yourself. I think freedom is on a bigger scale, like be able to take the actions that you see fit and not feel restricted in doing that. But specifically with art making, I think that's also about the expression of yourself.
Fill in the blank. Anger can be a productive emotion when
it's not doing others harm. I think I heard. Oh yeah, that was a quote like on Instagram I saw this morning. Of feelings are valid, but not all behaviors are welcome. Or something along those lines of you're certainly welcome to be angry. You're certainly welcome to feel how you feel, but how you act on it. There should be, and you should be aware that not every behavior is welcome or acceptable.
What's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
Oh, I don't. I feel like there are some general stereotypes, but I've met people on both sides of the aisle that can be both, and I like kind of channeling my own inner, more feminine characteristics, or quote unquote, historically feminine, like the softer or like fluidity that I think are generally associated with female side of the spectrum. But I feel like I've seen it all across the board, and I think that's beautiful to see. To be surprised that see a very manly man that could be acting very effeminate and soft, and like, wow, that's cool. Like we're kind of breaking down those gender norms.
It's good.
Through art of all things too.
Yeah. Well, through all practices, but there's a line, Kent, that goes, "You create what you resist." Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into "You are what you hate." James Joyce said, "It's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated in the religion in which you say you disbelieve." And Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, "Thank God I'm an atheist." So I'm curious your thoughts on this line, "You create what you resist." Not you, but one creates what one resists. Any thoughts on that line?
Yeah, I mean, my mind goes to now I'm blanking on the word, and this is where, my days of having writing and reading lessons kind of was part of my speech development issues. The kind of conundrum of the duality of those two, right? Like the hypocrisy of I think that's kind of inherent with everything. Like we were even talking about the ego, like it's kind of it's ego to like show up, but it's also then egoless to then do the thing in some cases. So that makes I like that the kind of hypocrisy of the two, and the duality is, I think, kind of part of the joy of life and also the struggle of life.
Both really good. These are 5 quick Alan Watts questions off the top of your head in just a couple words. 1, who started it all?
The stars.
2, are we going to make it?
Yeah, if we believe so.
3, where do we put it?
In front of us?
4,
I say with a question mark.
I like that. In front of us is good. 4, who's cleaning it up?
us. I'll say on that, like running this theater now, like I take that extra half hour some days to like properly clean up the space because
Gotta
it
clean it
is
up. I know about that. Putting on
throwing up.
putting on
Yeah.
events putting on events in Venice for 40 years. I know you got to know how to set up and take down folding chairs, and then you got to know how to clean underneath the seats and all over the place.
Sweep and
Okay,
mop.
yeah, sweep and mop. Okay, the fifth Alan Watts. Is it serious?
Can be if you want it to be.
Yeah. Frank Zappa says, I'm very serious about being not serious.
That's right. What was your relationship with him again? You worked with him back in
I
the day?
worked for 10 years. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was good. He's an amazing artist. You didn't check out Stinkfoot Orchestra at Venice West, April 16th. My band's opening for them, and they're a 14-piece orchestra that plays Zappa music. Unbelievable. They're really good. So we got about 10 more minutes, and I really appreciate your time here. How do you find peace of mind?
Oh, we were kind of talking about it earlier, especially at the end of the day. If my mind is still chattering, I like to journal, and it kind of just helps process it. I used to have a really strong regimen of journaling every day, and I just have learned that I don't have that same bandwidth. And if anything, it kind of inhibits me from experiencing life fully if I'm taking an hour and a half to like write down everything I experienced in the day. So I've kind of found a balance of having more peace of mind. Like when I need to have that peace of mind, is like taking that step back to say, okay, what do I need in this moment? What is troubling me, and just like at least get it out of my system.
It's really good. Can you forget to die?
I don't know. That's an interesting conundrum. I feel like you wouldn't have the chance to forget if you died. And if anything, I like reminding myself that death is a possibility in any moment. And I was working at Idlewild, working at Idlewild Arts many years ago, and I drove up one day when it was a very strong snowstorm. Police had blockaded it, and I had to like put on snow tires for the first time to like get up there. And I remember thinking, wow, I can't see the road in front of me. I might die. And just like accepted that moment there. Like this could happen. And am I proud of my life up until this point? Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I could die in this moment and be cool. Like, and so I like having that self-reflection to say, yeah, if anything, reminding myself not about death, but like reminding myself that it could happen, and being like proud of my existence up until that point, to say like, yeah, I lived a good life, and not feel, and at the same time knowing that like, oh, there's so many more things to be excited about and want to experience, that is the reason to keep forging forth.
Yeah, Kent, you're articulate and concise. I appreciate it, because most people, it's hard for people to hear that question because they don't know if I mean it literally or metaphorically. And you sort of went both ways, and it was beautiful. Thank you. So if you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Keep going.
Yeah.
It's all worth it. I think about that every once in a while. Like if I had the chance to go back and say anything, if anything, it might be like the practical stuff of like, oh yeah, invest in Tesla, and then get into Bitcoin at this time and move out, like some practical things I might advise. Or say like, oh, that thing you're worried about, not a big deal. Like the Bloom Anchor thing, like not a big deal. Like try to open your mind. If anything, it's like I don't, and that's where I don't want to tarnish those memories, because I think that's all part of my existence and growth and becoming. So if I had the chance, it'd just be fun to like meet my younger self and be like, hey, look at me, I'm sure not fine.
Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Over. That's the way it's designed. I think that's like how the manufacturers intended it. And I get it if you have a cat and they like to like scratch at it. Under makes sense because then it can just roll upon itself. But I think over, it's more effective, and it's enough of a pet peeve that like I will sometimes turn it around, but I've let that slide as well.
If a publisher was going to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
I've thought about writing a book, but it'd be specifically Rimba tubes. And so I think it'd probably be like Rimba tubes and beyond,
because I think that's the biggest gift that most people know me for, that I would want to share. Like the biggest gift I would want to share out, like, here's my knowledge with this instrument that I've, had such a long career with. But I think that's where I'd have to have some caveat or a colon additional thing that kind of shows that there's more to me than just that.
They want to scent the glue and the binding of your book. What smell?
Oh, you can have a smell with that? That's cool. I like lavender, but maybe like maple syrup. That'd be fun. That's like sweet.
If a
I used to
statue,
work for Salt and Straw, so I just like, I have a sweet tooth, and like I like very.
you used to work
things.
for them? Wow.
Yeah, back in the day, like a decade ago. It was very
Wow.
fun. Very good ice cream.
Good ice cream. If a statue is built in your honor, where would you want it displayed, and what would it be made of?
I feel like I haven't lived enough of my life to know where that would exist. I think I could say it could be home in Lake Oswego, Oregon. I feel like I'm starting to have, a grounding here. I'd love to, stay in Venice for many years to come too, that it could be important to me to have it here. So TBD on the location. I think that'd be for future generations to decide. Made of, ooh, I'm now like excited about the possibility of more abstract things that are more temporary, like water or like a colorful fountain of some sort, where somehow it like blossoms out in a visual way that could represent me, but it's impermanent material. Would be kind of interesting. Otherwise, gold. It'd be fun to have like something really cool and glossy, but I'm curious what like a sculpture made out of water would be. Colorful water.
No, Ken, it's amazing you're saying that, because the second part of that question I formulated because Susie's mom, when I asked her if a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed? She says, I would want it to be water running over pebbles.
Amazing.
And so then I started to go, well, why don't I ask what would it be made of? And then you almost went back and nailed what Mimsy said.
Well, it's interesting. I've learned in recent years that there's the form when you die, you could have a casket like burial, you could have a cremation, but there are these now more modern ways to experience to have your ashes shared, and there's a way to have it like planted into like a tree, and I think that'd be a really beautiful way to have a full circle of life, and to be able to then offer new life beyond past my death too. So I'm curious about that.
The guy in the Weavers, he had his ashes spread in his garden. So then his kids were eating dad's fertilizer. Why not?
It's wild to think about. And that's where I'm like, maybe just a tree that's not edible, but at least, talk about circle of life.
It's fertilizer. It's growth. Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
The quick, easy response is that the chance to be in the Blue Man Group. Like I've had enough times to collaborate with them that kind of scratched the itch, but at the same time, I think that was such a blessing to not be kind of golden handcuffs, kind of stuck in this like particular show. And I'm grateful to have had the experiences I've had with them, and to be a spokesperson or do some fun like jams around the world. But ultimately, it's cool to have my own path and to be able to do my own thing and have the freedom to like make videos and music however I want. And I just released a song on Thursday with a friend because like we wanted to, and it's not like I have like a agent or manager that would have to say like you have to do this every month or get it out in this time. It's just like, yep, this feels good, this is what we want to do, let's get it out there and celebrate that. Really good. I think I wouldn't have that if I was in the Blue Man Group. I would be more restricted.
Really good. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Wow. Okay. Vomit and shit. I think my initial thing would be try to swim out and maybe blow the shit away. Probably call for help and hope for a better future.
That is good. No one ever has a detailed plan like that. Here's one artist said, cry.
Oh, Yeah, I don't think in that moment you're focused on so much else. I don't think there's time to cry. You gotta like,
Well,
it's
it was an
fight or
Alta.
flight.
This Altacocker on Venice Boardwalk taught me so much, and he taught me that question. And it's sort of like you can look at it as that's the human condition. We're all in bad vomits, and people are throwing bags of shit on your face. What are you going to do about it? Actually, check this out. This woman on the Venice Boardwalk nailed it. She said, I would take the velocity of the bag of shit to use my way to swoop my way out of the vomit. So I said, that's the Descent in the Maelstrom by Edgar Allan Poe, which influenced McLuhan Major. You look at the patterns of the broken boat going around you, instead of being swooped into your death, you use them to swoop your way out. So again, it's like how you turn a breakdown into a breakthrough. Yeah.
Yeah, I think of those like the cone-shaped domes where it's like you're supposed to just run in a circle to get out of it.
Yeah.
It's like that kind of thought. Yeah. Use it to get out. Yeah, to get out of it.
Very good. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
There is, again, we live in Venice. I don't know how this isn't on a global scale, but the kind of the rise against AI, and I think the form of, you know, being a theater manager, like associate artistic director of Electric Lodge, there is the act of putting on a theater show is kind of a counter to AI and this technology reliance, and I think there's some beauty in performance and art making that is kind of the antidote for that in our lives right now, and I'm kind of inspired and excited by that. And it's something that I've been doing for decades, and so it's cool to be like, oh, there is a resurgence and a desire for community building in person, because, you know, we had such a limitation of that in the pandemic era.
Yeah, we got some great venues for live events in Venice. Theater, yours, Beyond Baroque, Pacific Residence. For such a small little enclave, it's really healthy. It's beautiful.
So great.
We're lucky. What's a question that remains unresolved for you?
I have to thank you. This has been lovely for the past hour and a half to take some time to slow down and reflect, because I don't allow myself to do that so much. I feel like I've been supporting others in my, you know, position now, that like I'm more focused on externally helping others. So even in this moment, the reflection of a question that I haven't had solved is maybe that's the question of like, what is that question? And I think that's the pursuit for me, because I haven't given myself time to reflect on that.
Yeah, you know, Ken, it's guy goes to his guru and goes, what's the best question I can ask you? And the guru goes, the one you just asked me. How has being an artist shaped your behavior?
I think it's allowed me to feel kind of a lightness and a playfulness. I think there's inherently kind of you kind of channel your youthful spirit by being an artist and playing. So I'm really grateful that that's kind of kept me buoyant throughout my life. At the same time, I'm finding the joy and the balance of that, like being the event creator and producer, to like support that and finding more solace and enjoyment and being the grounded support for others to let their joy and playfulness come out. But I think from my artistry, it's that.
It's a key word. You know, Brian Eno says, play is how children learn. Art is how adults play.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that.
Remind ourselves to keep playing. Yeah. It's kind of the key thing. And it's where it's fun to see like artists that are in their 80s, 90s that are still crushing it. Like I can think of like Chick Corea, like, you know, I remember seeing him on a live stream in January of 2022 that he passed away in February, where it's like there was no sign of his cancer or anything. It was just like he was still like playing a tour and crushing it with his career. And and that's so joyful to see across all ages. And I think that's because of the
Yeah.
spirit of playfulness. It just kind of allows somebody just to come to life.
Yeah. Thornton Wilder, Our Town, 1928, he said, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
Play.
Yeah.
Ultimately, and that's the best, highest form of connection and self-expression. And I think that's kind of the ultimate goal in my life and others' lives. I would hope so too, or just a reminder for other people that there can be a lot of joy in that. And that's where, the meaning of it all comes from. I think the goal of connecting has kind of always been my mission, but I think the highest form of that again is through play.
Really beautiful. Last question is, what gives you the most optimism?
I also heard Ellen Burr's response and you saying that most people say youth. So I want to take a second back to see if I can think of something else other than that. I cheated. I peeked ahead. What gives me optimism? I think it's I find optimism in seeing friends and people that I cherish, and I think it crosses all ranges and demographics in that way, because I get so much joy and light of seeing my friend Gaia from Italy. Like I can, she comes into town, it's like we never missed a beat. Or being with my family, going home and hugging them and seeing them, or a best friend from college, or my girlfriend or my coworkers at the lodge. It's speaking with you too, it's like a joy, because I'll see you ride your bike or down the street, or see you at the Mardi Gras parade and running by, and I'm like, oh cool, yeah, you're like we're all in this community together, and there's just a joy and seeing each other and recognizing that. So I think for me that's my optimism is other people.
Yeah, that's great, because living in Venice, 1 million people walk through our neighborhood, the boardwalk, every day or every week. It's some huge statistic, but that people don't realize there's an immense, cool community in Venice that's really close knit. And the first question I asked, what's the best thing for a human being? And Wilhelm Reich said the best thing for a human being is another human being. And the last question I asked is, what gives you the most optimism? That's what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And he said, other people. So it's sure been fun spending this time with another person, especially because it was you, Kent. Thank you so much for your time and energy, man.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate you too. This is beautiful. Thank you. And doing it for 700, how many times? 778 times.
Your number 778. Well, no, there's about 300 before that over the years. So it's over 1,000, but it's not it's not really the quantity, it's the quality. And it's so fun talking to people who are articulate and concise like you and can practice their art in a great community like ours. So even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever, man.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you so